Imagine walking through the heart of Nigeria's ancient forest, where myth and legend come alive. Welcome to Ondo, a land steeped in tradition and mystery. This is the story of the Sacred Python of Ondo.
In the village of Olukusi, life was simple. Farmers tended to their crops, children played in the streets, and elders shared stories of the past. Everything was beautiful, but beneath the surface, a powerful force lurked. The Sacred Python, Orunbi, the protector of the village, the bringer of rain and the punisher of those who dared to disrespect the land. Our story begins on one fateful morning. The villagers of Olukusi woke to a silent, strange voice. It was a kind of silence that was so loud, the women in the village noticed that their usual noisy chickens were silent. The farmers also noticed that the streams that they visited was running slower than usual. It was as if the whole village was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And even the little children could feel it, as they all ran outside, looked at the sky in fear, and tugged their mother's wrappers. Mama! Mama! Why is the sky so grey? They looked and they asked frantically. Their mothers looked up, their lips tightened as if it was holding back a truth too heavy for a child to usher them all back inside. After sending their kids home and locking the door, the elders gathered at the town square. Baba Odu, the village elder, sat in the middle of the square, his face shrouded in disarray as he looked up to the sky and backed down. And he shook his head. This is not ordinary, my people. I have seen signs like this before. The spirits are relentless, he said. The words hopped in the air like a ceiling fan. Everyone immediately knew what he meant. And they all turned to Iyaifa, the village oracle, for answers. She was the only one that was said to have spoken to the Sacred Python back in the day when she was still moved around people. Iyaifa began her ritual, drawing symbols in the dust, tracing lines from one place to the other, looking like a serpent. She looked, she turned, winding through the earth. She hummed an ancient song. Her voice trembled as she swayed back forth. Everyone watched her with both fear and awe. After a while, her eyes shut open. She cried out, "The spirits are angry! A great sin has been committed. The Sacred Python, Orunbi, has been disrespected. The balance is broken. And until it is restored, the land will suffer. Death will walk amongst us." Whispered broke through the crowd and everyone wondered what could have committed such crime. And they asked, who could have committed such crimes? But Iya Ifa was not done. She continued saying, the one who broke the law must be found before the next full moon. If not, Orunbi will take what he is owed. A blood sacrifice from the family of the offenders. She laughed. Everyone exchanged worries, glances. They had never had such face-off, such a serious incident before. And they barely had time because the next full moon was in 2 days' time. That night, no one in Olukusi could sleep. They all wondered who had angered the sacred python. Did someone accidentally kill someone? They wondered, asking, did someone kill one of the smaller pythons? Not knowing if it was a child of Orunbi? Nobody knew. And if the next full moon rose without answers, the village will pay the price far greater than the one that could ever imagine. When the whispers of the night settled over Olukusi, they rappered and they gathered around Adunni like a shroud heavy and inescapable. The night had a way of making thoughts sharper, clearer, turning worries into something you could almost reach out for and touch. Adunni, a younger mother with eyes that once sparkled with dreams, now held a gaze clouded with fear and uncertainty. She sat in the dim corner with her small heart, cradling her infant son, Bamidele, whose tiny breaths were the only rhythm steady enough to keep her from breaking. Her husband, Adewale, had always been the brave one, the kind of man who could track a deer for miles and come home smiling with tales of the forest. But 2 weeks ago, he had left for one such expedition and never returned. Each day of his expeditions, each day of his absence, gunned at Adunni hopes like termites, slowly turning into dust. She had told herself, that he's lost. Did he lose his way? Or perhaps found a shelter in a neighboring village? But deep down, she knew that something was wrong. She knew that something was wrong. The day Iya Ife announced that someone had offended Orunbi, Adunni's knees had nearly buckled beneath her. She was restless. Adunni knew something was wrong. She clutched Bamidele tightly to her chest as the oracle voice boomed through the village square. And every word felt like a hammer striking the fragile shell of hope and they had built around themselves and herself. Orunbi knew. Orunbi will take that, what is old. Iya Ife voice echoed, dead into the night. A blood sacrifice became so loud. she could barely have any other thoughts in her head. Adunni's heart raised as if it wanted to tear itself free. She glanced round the crowd, faces twisted with fear and desperation, as she could feel their eyes shifting towards her. Just for a second, but long enough to send a shiver through her bones. Could they suspect her? What if these people are suspecting me? What if they are suspecting me? Did they know she had found the talisman? She plunged in silence, letting her grief and her fear remain hidden. Bone, she was smart, she was looking all fenced, behind the marks of stonic calm. But inside her, her thoughts changed like a storm. What if it is true? What if it is true? What if Adewale disturbed the shrine? What if? Her mind recoiled at the next thought, refusing to ever complete it. Outside her hut that night, the voices of the villagers grew louder, filled with urgency and anger. If the rain doesn't come, we will have no harvest. We will starve. Someone cried. Their voices croaked and cracked under the weight of fear. People, we must find the one who angered Orunbi. We must find the one who angered Orunbi. Adunni leaned closer to the wall, listening. Her soft son's voice breathed against her neck. She knew that if the truth comes out, the villagers realized that Adunni might have been the one who disturbed the shrine. They could demand the sacrifice. And if Adewale was gone, then Bamidele, her little boy, will be the next. Obviously. She gritted her teeth, feeling her chest tighten with terror. She never knew, and she never knew before, she could not let them take him. She would fight until her last breath to protect him. She would fight to protect him. But she also knew how powerful the fear of the unknown could be. It could turn neighbors into enemies. How could it lead desperate people to do desperate things? As the night dragged on and the embers of the village fires began to fade, Adunni sat in the shadows, staring at the worn, wooden figure of the hunting dog in her hands. She turned it over as if it was curved. An edge might somehow reveal that, what had happened to her husband. But all it did was remind her of the unanswered questions, of the darkness that hung around her life like a cloud that refused to let the sun through. Could she keep the secret? Was a question she asked herself. She wondered, or would the guilt and fear eat away at her until there was nothing, absolutely nothing left? She made up her mind, as the first light of dawn crept into the sky, painting the village in a pale, ghostly glow. She would go to the edge of the forbidden forest, to the place where she had found Adewale's talisman. Perhaps there, in the silence of the tree, she might find a clue. Something would reveal whether her husband was truly gone, or if, by some miracle, he was still alive, hidden away, far away by mysteries of the forest. But she knew this journey would be dangerous. Even stepping too close, very close to the edge of the forest was enough to invoke the wrath of the spirit. The elders had told stories of those who ventured into far, far places, who had been found days later babbling nonsense, their mind lost to the whispers of Orunbi. If she went, she would probably have moved quietly, well, maybe unseen, like a shadow among the trees, with her song cradled safely in the slang. Adunni made her way towards the edge of the forest as the village still slept. Unaware of her plan, her heart pounded in her chest with every step, each one bringing her closer to the darkness that seems to pause at the forest edge. This is intriguing. This is intriguing. Well, she reached the spot where she had found the talisman and knelt down, feeling the cold earth beneath her fingers as she brushed aside the fallen leaves. Something caught her eye, a small patch of earth. Recently distributed or disturbed. Her breath caught in the throat and her dog, carefully, her hands trembled. What she found made her heart stop. A footprint, faint but unmistakable, pressed in the soil. It was fresh, too fresh to belong to a ghost. Adunni's mind raced. Could it be Adewale's? Could he have survived what cost had befallen him? What if he was alive? Why had he not returned to the village? Why had he not returned? Why? She mumbled. And if he wasn't, then whose footprint is this? What footprint is this? Walking so close to the forbidden shrine. She swallowed hard, feeling a mix of hope, twist inside. She couldn't go back now. Not with the possibilities of answer so close. Now I can't go back. The answers are so close to me, I can't go back. As she looked deeper into the shadows of the forest, she realized that whatever laid ahead, whatever truth she might uncover, it would change everything she had thought she knew about the sacred python, her husband, and the village she called home. Well, she could not ignore the feeling that crept up her spine, that cold, unsettling sensation that just maybe, some secrets were meant to stay buried. Adunni tightened her grip to the wooden talisman, casting one last glance back at her sleeping village before stepping into the shadows. And as the trees closed in around her, she felt as though the forest itself was watching, waiting for what might find next. The moon sat high in the sky, casting a pale glow all over the village of Olukusi as Adunni slept out of her small thatched hut. She wrapped a faded cloth tightly around her, its edges frying from eyes of use. In her right hand, she held a small dagger, its blade worn but still sharp. A keep spear from Adewale's, her husband. Now it served as her only comfort. With each step, she felt the weight of the village's fear pressing down on her, and her own fear growling at her resolve. The path of the forbidden forest lay shrouded in paths, but it wasn't unfamiliar to Adunni. Adewale had spoken to her about a hidden trail that went through the trees, leading directly to the sacred python shrine. A plague whispered about, yet always avoided. He had described the old trees with their ground trunks, and now they seemed to lean in, as if they were keeping the forest sacred. He spoke of how the air turned colder as they ventured deeper, and how even the animals seemed to grow silent. It was a dangerous place, but tonight she had no choice. She was determined. She was ready to take that move. As Adunni walked the forest, came alive with its usual nighttime symphony. The chirping of crickets, the distant ow of animals she could name, and the rustle of leaves as unseen, scattered creatures moved in the underbush. But beneath it all, she felt a different presence. Something ancient, but seemed to watch her every move. With every step, the trees thickened, their branches twisting into the sky like the fingers of old men. It wasn't long before she noticed the air changing. It grew heavy and cold, like the shroud wrapping around her. Adunni pressed on, ignoring. She pressed on, ignoring the prickle at the back of her back, even as the path seemed to narrow and the darkness pressed in closer. Her thoughts kept drifting back to her son, Bamidele, which she carried, his small face peaceful, sleeping. When she had left, I have to do this for him. She reminded herself. After what felt like an eternity, Adunni reached the presence of the forbidden shrine. The mouth of the cave yawned open before her, dark and foreboding, as if daring her to step inside. The hairs on her back stood up. She paused for a moment, her hand tightening around her dagger. She thought about turning back, about pretending she had never come close this far. But then she remembered the look of Iyaifa's eye, the whispers of the villagers, and the way they had stared at her son as if already measuring the cost of saving the village. With a deep breath, she stepped into the cave. The air inside the cave was thick, cold and damp. Each step she took sent echoes bouncing off the walls, and the sound seemed to stretch on forever, as if the cave itself was swallowing it. She was scared, really scared. Water dripping from the ceilings, from the walls, the poles, on the floor, the shrines in the faint night. It was a place where time felt like it stood still. Where the past and the present blurred into one. Adunni shivered, trying to steady her breath, but it kept coming in quick, panicked bursts. A low, rhythmic sound filled the cave, a deep hissing that seemed to come from every direction. Adunni froze, straining her ears. The sound grew louder, closer, until she realized it wasn't just a sound, it was a presence. A shifting, slithering presence that moved beyond her sight. She took another step forward, and her foot slipped on the wet stone beneath her, and her heart and hands shot out to steady herself like trying to catch a balance, and her fingers brushed against the walls. brushed against the walls, brought something smooth, something cold. She pulled back instinctively, but not before she felt it moved beneath her touch. Adunni gasped, stumbling back as a massive shape began to uncoil from the shadows. The sacred python Orunbi revealed itself, its body rippling with scales that gleamed in the faint light, like a river of liquid gold. Obsidian. The serpent head rose, its eyes glowing like a deep erring yellow that seems to pierce through her every soul. It looked at her, not with the gaze of a simple animal, but with an intellect that made her blood run cold. "You have come," the voice echoed. "You have come," the voice echoed through the cave, but it wasn't the voice of words. It filled her mind, reverberating within her skull, and Adunni clapped a hand to her ear, as if to block out the impossible sound. She fell on her knees, her body shaking, uncontrollable. "Great Orunbi, I beg your forgiveness," she stammered, her voice barely more than a whisper in the vast darkness. My husband! Adewale." He came too close. He meant no harm. The python's body shifted, the sound of its scale sliding across the stone, filling the air, and Adunni felt a cold, heavy weight settled on her chest. A law was broken. The serpent hissed, its voice like 1,000 whispers, blending into one. A life must be given to restore the balance. Adunni swallowed hard, her throat dry, her mind racing. "Take me!" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the thundering of her heart. Take me, but spare my son, spare my village." Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Orunbi's eyes glowed brighter, its head tilting slightly as if to consider her offer. Then it spoke, and this time the words seemed to seep into every stone of the cave, carrying a weight that might make Adunni feel as though the air had turned to lead. "I will spare your son," the python said slowly, its voice coiling round her mind like a vein. "But your life alone will not balance the scale. You must serve me, Adunni. You will guide this shrine. You will keep my secrets, and in return, your village will know prosperity." Adunni's mind reeled. This was not what she had expected. Not a death, but a life of servitude, tied to this ancient place and the creature that dwelled within it. But when she thought of her son, of his small hands, and the innocent way he smiled up at her, she knew there was no other choice. "I accept," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The python's massive coils wrapped around her, but they did not crush her. Instead, they held her in a cold, unyielding embrace, binding her to a fate that she could barely understand. When Adunni returned to the village at dawn, she walked like a ghost, her movements slow and deliberate, as if every step she took further from her life, she knew that this was going to end. The villagers, seeing her approached, gathered quickly, their faces a mix of relief and curiosity. She looked different, her eyes deeper, her face etched with a sorrow that could not place. Baba Udu stepped forward, his voice cautious. Adunni, what happened in the village when you were away? Tell us what happened in the forest. She looked at him and then at the faces of the villagers. She knew and she had no other. She knew her life was over. She had known all her whole life, whose lives now rested on the promise she had made. The rain will come, she said softly, her voice carrying over the crowd like a distant thunder. But there was a price. And as if to prove her words, the sky darkened, clouds gathered with stiffness that sent a murmur through the crowd. A moment later, the first drop, toop, 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 rain began to fall, fast and heavy, soaking into the dry earth. The villagers shouted with joy, raising their hands to the sky, celebrating the end of their suffering. But Adunni stood apart, watching the rain with a distance, hollow grazed, knowing that this new chapter had only begun. She was now the keeper of the shrine, bound to a secret that would haunt the village of Olukusi for generations to come. As though the rain had come, there was a darkness and the forest that would never follow or never would have allowed her live. The villagers would tell their stories of the sacred pythons of Adunni's sacrifice and the mysterious change that swept over her. But only she would know that what truly locked in the shadows, watching, waiting for her. And as she couldn't shake that feeling, that deep in her heart of the forest, Orunbi still had secret yet to reveal that might one day come with a price of its own.